Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Vanchakapadurusha Kripasanave Vachapatitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Gopremanande Hari Hari Bo. Namaskar Prabhu, this is the verse 6115 that I mentioned this morning when you said you felt like smoke was clearing when chanting the holy names. And the verse is 6115 from the Srimad Bhagavatam, of course. And it says, of course, this is Shukadeva Goswami speaking about the power of the holy name. He's talking about the way that one overcomes the tendency to commit sinful activities in the material world, because it's established that one can take self-help and temporarily change one's habit patterns and so forth. But then, as someone mentioned the other night, I think it was Bhakta Alex, he mentioned, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Akinchana Sarvara Gunas Tatra Samasati Sura Harava Bhaktasya Kutom Mahadguna Manoratina Sati Davato Vihi. And that is that as long as one's on the chariot of the mind, that one will come back to one's habits again, because they're rooted in the heart and we have a taste for them. And similarly, Shukadeva Goswami says that any kinds of prayaschitta, or ways to reverse sinful activities in this world through karma kanda, is like cutting a field down or even burning it, but then when the rain comes, it sprouts back up again. So how is it that the seeds themselves become destroyed completely and one gives up the tendency for sinful activity? That's the point that one has to come to. And in 6.1.11, Shukadeva Goswami says, the son of Vyasadeva, Vedavyas, answered, "My dear king, since acts meant to neutralize impious actions are also fruitive, they will not release one from the tendency to act fruitively. Persons who subject themselves to the rules and regulations of atonement are not at all intelligent. Indeed, they are in the mode of darkness. Unless one is freed from the mode of ignorance, trying to counteract one action through another is useless, because this will not uproot one's desires. One may Thus, even though one may superficially seem pious, he will undoubtedly be prone to act impiously. Therefore, real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge, Vedanta, by which one understands the supreme absolute truth." Text 12, "My dear king, if a diseased person eats the pure, uncontaminated food prescribed by a physician, he is gradually cured and the infection of disease can no longer touch him. Similarly, if one follows the regulative principles of knowledge, he gradually progresses toward liberation from material contamination." 13:14. "To concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean, and nonviolent. Follow the regulative principles and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. Thus, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with his body, words, and mind. These sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity." In the purport, Prabhupada says, the tongue, jiva, can be controlled if one chants the Hare Krishna mantra. This is still 6.1.14 in the purport. The tongue, jiva, can be controlled if one chants the Hare Krishna mantra, does not speak of any subjects other than those concerning Krishna. It does not taste anything not offered to Krishna. If one can control the tongue in this way, brahmacharya and other purifying processes will automatically follow. Isn't that interesting? by the restricting the tongue to Krishna Katha and Krishna Prasadam. Now we come to 15, and this is the verse that I brought up this morning during the Japa circle. Shukadeva Goswami is a famous verse. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agam dunvanti kartsnena niharam iva bhaskara. So I only quoted the last line of this, agam dunvanti kartsnena niharam iva bhaskara. The first line says, Kechit, some people, kevalaya bhaktya, by executing unalloyed devotional service. Vasudeva parayana, completely attached to Vasudeva. Then agam, all kinds of sinful activities like agasura. Dunvanti means to destroy. Kartsnyena, completely with no possibility that sinful desires will revive. Niharam, fog. Nihara means fog. And iva, like Bhaskara, the sun. The translation is, only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. And here's the purport. In the previous verse, Shukadeva Goswami gave the example that the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree may be completely burnt to ashes by a fire, although the creepers may sprout again because the root is still in the ground. Similarly, because the root of sinful desire is not destroyed in the heart of a person who is cultivating knowledge, but who has no taste for devotional service, there is a possibility that his sinful desires will reappear. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.4, Shreya Shritim Bhakti Mudasyate Vibho Klishanti Kevala Bhota Labdaye. Speculators who undergo great labor to gain a meticulous understanding of the material world by distinguishing between sinful and pious activities, but who are not situated in devotional service, are prone to material activities. They may fall down and become implicated in fruitive activities. If one becomes attached to devotional service, however, his desires for material enjoyment are automatically vanquished without separate endeavor. Bhakti parishanu bhavu virakti anyatra cha. If one is advanced in Krishna consciousness, material activities, both sinful and pious, automatically become distasteful to him. That is a taste of Krishna consciousness. Test, rather. Both pious and impious activities are actually due to ignorance, because a living entity, as an eternal servant of Krishna, has no need to act for his personal sense gratification. Therefore, as soon as one is reclaimed to the platform of devotional service, he relinquishes his attachment for pious and impious activities and is interested only in what will satisfy Krishna. This process of bhakti, devotional service to Krishna, Vasudeva Parayana, relieves one from the reactions of all activities. Since Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee, the answers of his guru, Shukadeva Goswami, concerning Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda could not satisfy him. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami, knowing very well the heart of his disciple, explained the transcendental bliss of devotional service. The word kechit, which is used in this sense, in this verse, means a few people, but not all. Not everyone can become Krishna conscious. As Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Manusharam sahasreshu kashchid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kashchin mambeti tatvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Practically, no one understands Krishna as he is, for Krishna cannot be understood through pious activities or attainment of the most elevated speculative knowledge. Actually, the highest knowledge consists of understanding Krishna. Unintelligent men who do not understand Krishna are grossly puffed up, thinking that they are liberated or have themselves become Krishna or Narayan. This is ignorance. To indicate the purity of bhakti, devotional service, Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanyana vratam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami further explains that bhakti is kleshagni shubhada, which means if one takes to devotional service, all kinds of unnecessary labor and material distress cease entirely, and one achieves all good fortune. Bhakti is so powerful that it is also said to be moksha laghu takrit. That, in other words, it minimizes the importance of liberation. Non-devotees must undergo material hardships because they are prone to commit sinful fruitive activities. The desire to commit sinful actions continues in their hearts due to ignorance. These sinful actions are divided into three categories, pataka, mahapataka, and atipataka, and also into two divisions, prarabdha and aprarabdha. Prarabdha refers to sinful reactions from which one is suffering at the present, and aprarabdha refers to sources of potential suffering. When the seeds, bija, of sinful reactions have not yet fructified, the reactions are called aprarabdha. These seeds of sinful action are unseen, but they are unlimited, and no one can trace when they were first planted. Because of prarabdha, sinful reactions that have already fructified, one is seen to have taken birth in a low family or to be suffering from other miseries. When one takes to devotional service, however, all phases of sinful life, including prarabdha, aprarabdha, and bija, are vanquished. In Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-19, Lord Krishna tells Uddhava, Yatagni sus samriddarchi karoti damsi bhasmasat tatamad vishaya bhaktir Uddhavai namshi Krishna shaha. My dear Uddhava, devotional service and relationship with me is like a blazing fire that can burn to ashes all the fuel of sinful activities supplied to it. How devotional service vanquishes the reactions of sinful life is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:33-6, in a verse spoken during Lord Kapiladev's instructions to his mother, Devahuti. Devahuti said, Yannama deha shravanad kirtanad yet pravanad yet smaranad api kuchit. Shradhopi sadya savanaya kulpate kutak punaste bhagavandu darshanat. My dear Lord, if even a person born in a family of dog eaters hears and repeats the chanting of your glories, offers respects to you and remembers you, he is immediately greater than a brahmana and is therefore eligible to perform sacrifices. Therefore, what is to be said of one who has seen you directly? In the Padma Purana, there is a statement that persons whose hearts are always attached to the devotional service of the Lord are immediately released from all the reactions of sinful life. These reactions generally exist in four phases. Some of them are ready to produce results immediately. Some are in the form of seeds, some are unmanifest, and some are current. All such reactions are immediately nullified by devotional service. When devotional service is present in one's heart, desires to perform sinful activities have no place there. Sinful life is due to ignorance, which means forgetfulness of one's constitutional position as an eternal servant of God. But when one is fully Krishna conscious, he realizes that he is God's servant. In this regard, Srila Jiva Goswami comments that bhakti may be divided into two divisions. One, santata, devotional service that continues incessantly with faith and love. And two, kadachitki, devotional service that does not continue incessantly but is sometimes awakened. Incessantly flowing devotional service, santata, may be divided into two categories. One, service performed with slight attachment, and two, spontaneous devotional service. Intermittent devotional service, kadachitki, may be divided into three categories. One, Raga Bhasamayi, devotional service, in which one is almost attached. Raga Bhasa Shunya Swarupa Bhuta, devotional service in which there is no spontaneous love, but one likes the constitutional position of serving. And 3, Abhasa Rupa, a slight glimpse of devotional service. As for atonement, if one has caught even a slight glimpse of devotional service, all needs to undergo prayashchitta, atonement, are superseded. Therefore, atonement is certainly unnecessary when one has achieved spontaneous love, and above that, attachment with love, which are signs of increasing advancement in kadachitki. Even in the stage of abhasa rupa bhakti, all the reactions of sinful life are uprooted and vanquished. Srila Jiva Goswami expresses the opinion that the word karsnyena means that even if one has a desire to commit sinful actions, the roots of that desire are vanquished merely by abhasa rupa bhakti. The example of Bhaskara, the sun, is most appropriate. The abhasa feature of bhakti is compared to twilight, and the accumulation of one's sinful activities is compared to fog. Since fog does not spread throughout the sky, the sun need do no more than merely manifest its first rays, and the fog immediately disappears. Similarly, if one has even a slight relationship with devotional service, all the fog of his sinful life is immediately vanquished. Naimisharanya Prabhu, are you still there?
Yes, yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Now you know that's your verse, right?
Yes, this was just appropriate. Thank you so much for sharing.
Student of that verse. Kechit Kevalaya Bhaktya. It's a really important verse. And the purport, I mean, it's classic. Every one of Prabhupada's purports is a classic, but this one is all-inclusive in the progression of devotional service. Spoken directly by Shukadeva Goswami on the subject matter of, really it's in the context of the power of the holy name to overcome any kind of sinful reactions that are there within the heart, because this is something that Parikshit Maharaj, out of his compassion for living entities, wanted to know. After he hears about the hellish planets in the 6th and the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he wants to know, how is it that the souls will be saved from this? And Shukadeva then tells the story of a Jamil and indicates that by touching devotional service, abhasa rupa, just a little bit as the sun appears, if one takes to the process of devotional service, following in the footsteps of the pure devotees, then the sinful reactions of one's previous lives are mitigated. Nihara iva paskara, just as fog is dissipated by the first rays of the sun that appear, it diminishes them. Before we go back into the 7th canto, let's just see if there's any comments or questions about this all-important verse.
Hare Krishna, I have unmuted, so you can just click unmute and you'll be able to.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you so much for sharing this, Maharaj. The point which really struck to me was how the weeds of sinful actions will be uprooted with no possibility of reviving. I thought that was really stark. We have a veggie garden in the back, in our backyard, and we keep getting weeds, and we keep pulling them out, and we get more weeds, and they keep coming. And when we pull them out from the roots, that's when they don't come. And I think this was really nice to hear that just by unalloyed devotional service, those weeds can be uprooted once for all.
Are you pulling them by hand?
We are, yes.
I highly suggest that you get a Mont Blanc.
Okay.
It's the best weeding tool that, if you're taking things out by hand. Hold on, I'll go get it for you. I'll be right back. It's worth seeing this.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Rama Rama Hare
Please
Hare.
behold the Mont Blanc. This is a Mont Blanc, Montblanc. Can you see the teeth?
Yes, yes, Maharaj.
So this tool, this you can get the roots. So when you're digging and you're trying to get an individual weed out, then you put this in and it'll grab the roots at the very bottom and pull it out. So I was using this the other day and I was thinking how in the word mantra, you've got that R, mantra. It reminds me of this little hook. The mantra grabs on and pulls out, from the very root. Any kind of anartha that's gotten deeply into the mind and heart. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said we have to be vigilant about that process because there's ways in which even as one starts to water the creeper of devotional service, then there are other kinds of opportunistic seeds that sprout and they start to grow up there. So one has to be vigilant even when the creeper grows all the way back to the lotus feet of Krishna in the spiritual world. As we're cultivating devotional service, one still has to continue watering, one has to be careful of offenses, and one has to also keep weeding using the Mont Blanc of the Hare Krishna mantra.
So Maharaj,
Okay.
Yes. Maharaj, in your previous class, you had talked about removing the weeds, and you had mentioned that the best time to do that is when there is rains. So if you can elaborate a little bit more on that, like what do we consider as rain? Is it devotee association?
Well, let's just say if you went to a big festival,
Uh-huh.
and it's like when we hear and chant by ourselves, you're getting like a light rain because you sit down and you do your studies and things like that, and you feel enlivened. But when you go and you get association with very advanced devotees and you hear and chant for 3-4 days or a month in a row, then this is like a huge flood of rain, a deluge. And then the ground is so soft and supple, you can just easily pull it out. Or even when you hear and chant yourself, then you'll have the wherewithal to pull out the anarthas, because the problem is weakness of heart. Hridaya Dharbalyam, Haridas Thakur says that there's this weakness that I know the anartha is there, but I just think, leave it because I need that. I'll save it for later. And I'll try to, I'll ignore it now because I actually have an attachment to it. This is a kind of weakness. So the rain means spiritual strength. And then, we have the wherewithal to pull it out, and it comes out much easier then when you're in the association of devotees. And you figure like, why? I'd rather be like these people. I don't want to be like my old self. I want to be like these people. And then it's easier to pull it right out. Like, say if you're staying in the Dham and you're there with advanced devotees and you just become overwhelmed by the feeling like this is right. This is the right thing. And then, those anarthas, you just say, forget it.
Yeah.
I'm taking it out now. So that's the big rain.
Thank
Or
you.
even small rain helps too. Big rain, small rain, it's all good. As it says in this purport, Prabhupada pointing out that even abhasa rupa, that's the very, very beginning of devotional service. It's just when you feel like I like devotees, I think they're cool. This is the right thing. It's nice. Even then, it makes it niharai vabhaskara. That's the sun coming out, and it can even at that stage. Jiva Goswami, the most scholarly of all the acharyas, is saying that the anarthas are going to come out then too. Thank you for your question, Shraddha.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj, for the answer.
Okay.
Maharaj, I had a question.
Oh yes,
Follow-up
please.
to the follow-up question. So when we say that we take out the weeds, is this that I'm praying to the Lord that, oh Lord, please remove that negative feeling in my heart, how do I really believe that my weed is taken out?
Well, one thing is, we pray to the Lord, please help me take it out, and um, he's there as the Vidunoti. It's one of Krishna's names. He helps us to pull these things out. But there will come a moment of truth. As living entities, we're also powerful, and we also have volition, and we have to make a decision. And the decision we have to know is consequential. And so when that decision time comes, we have to have momentum and strength and good association so that we'll say, okay, I'm going to do it now. And it's not nothing, it's everything, actually. So there is 50%. Krishna is helping in every way, but he also wants to see us make our own decision because he's given us minute independence. And when we do make that decision that I'm going to do this, that's a big step forward in devotional service. So we should be preparing for those times when the decision has to come, and then we'll have the strength to make the right decision. In fact, in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali mentions that when you make such decisions to do the right thing, even though you have a choice right in that moment, you have the choice to do the right thing and you do it. He said that leaves a very powerful samskar in your mind that you can build on. That becomes part of your personality, and then you get more and more active in moving in that direction until that becomes your main purpose in life, and we're not waylaid by the anartas that pull us down. Tadarajas tamobhava kamalubadayasche cheta iteranabidam stitam safes. We become stitam. We get fixed. We come to this nishta point, and then we can see for ourselves that we're not being pushed around anymore by the lower modes of nature. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. That
Hare
was
Krishna.
very, very helpful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dainiti Prabhu is weighing in. We must remember that each and every decision we make is consequential. Yeah, that means discrimination. That's vivek, as a awakening of discrimination in our mind, that we're aware of consequences. And this is how a yogi thinks. A yogi's always aware that whatever I'm doing or thinking has a consequence, and therefore is very careful about how he or she moves around in this very sticky environment of the material world. And let's see, we have Radha Venkat Prabhu to everyone. Hare Krishna reminds me of Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hai Andakar. Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Maya Adhikar. You can tattoo that one on your arm. And remember that if you stay always in Krishna, then you're always in the sun and there'll be no darkness. That's how to drive it away. And let's see. It is quite amazing, just a slight tinge of devotional service, abhasa. And now I should perform the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense gratification. Shraddha Devi went Mont Blanc. And Sham Jagannath, the point is very hope-giving. Bhakti Devi is very merciful. Even if one has a desire to commit sinful actions, the roots of that desire are vanquished merely by abhasa, rupa bhakti. In Nectar of Instruction, the purport of the first verse, Prabhupada explains, real atonement is only coming to knowledge by devotional service. Raksha and Barsha, Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. What are those weeds? Can we please name a few as examples? Thank you. Yes, the weeds are mentioned by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He gives a catalog of these weeds, and you can find them. Here, let me give you. Go to, let's see. You go to 19.159, Madhya 19.159. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Sorry, March. Madhya.
Yeah,
9.
Madhya
Mhm.
19.159.
Okay.
This verse says, Nidachara kuti nati jiva himsana lava puja pratishtari jatta upashaka gana. Some unnecessary creepers. Are you going there? Yeah. Some unnecessary creepers growing with the bhakti creeper are the creepers of behavior unacceptable for those trying to attain perfection, diplomatic behavior, animal killing, mundane profiteering, mundane adoration, and mundane importance. All these are unwanted creepers. Purport. There is a certain pattern of behavior prescribed for those actually trying to become perfect. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we advise all our students not to eat meat, not to gamble, not to engage in illicit sex, and not to engage in intoxication. People who indulge in these activities can never become perfect. Therefore, these regulative principles are for those interested in becoming perfect and going back to Godhead. Kutinati, or diplomatic behavior, cannot satisfy the Atma, the soul. It cannot even satisfy the body or the mind. The culprit mind is always suspicious. Therefore, our dealings should always be straightforward and approved by Vedic authorities. If we treat people diplomatically or duplicitously, our spiritual advancement is obstructed. Jiva himsana refers to the killing of animals or to envy of other living entities. The killing of poor animals is undoubtedly due to envy of those animals. The human form is meant for the understanding of Krishna consciousness, atato brahma jignasa, for inquiring about the Supreme Brahman. In the human form, everyone has a chance to understand the Supreme Brahman. The so-called leaders of human society do not know the real aim of human life and are therefore busy with economic development. This is misleading. Every state and every society is busy trying to improve the quality of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This human form of life is meant for more than these four animal principles. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are problems found in the animal kingdom, and the animals have solved these problems without difficulty. Why should human society be so busy trying to solve these problems? The difficulty is that people are not educated to understand this simple philosophy. They think that advancement of civilization means decreasing sense gratification. There are many religious propagandists who do not know how the ultimate problems of life can be solved, and they also try to educate people in the form of sense gratification. This is also jiva himsana. Real knowledge is not given, and religionists mislead the general populace. As far as material profits are concerned, one should know that whatever material profit one has must be abandoned at the time of death. Unfortunately, people do not know that there is life after death. Therefore, mundane people waste their time amassing material profit, which has to be left behind at the time of death. Such profit has no eternal benefit. Simply adoration by mundane people is valueless because after death, one has to accept another body. Material adoration and titles are decorations that cannot be carried over to the next body. In the next life, everything is forgotten. All these obstructions have been described in this verse as unwanted creepers. They simply present obstacles for the real creeper, the bhakti lata. One should be very careful to avoid all these unwanted things. Sometimes these unwanted creepers look exactly like the bhakti creeper. They appear to be of the same size and the same species when they are packed together with the bhakti creeper. But in spite of this, the creepers are all upashaka. A pure devotee can distinguish between the bhakti creeper and the mundane creeper, and he is very alert to distinguish from them and keep them separate. So there you go, Barsha and Raksha. There's a small list, but there's a bigger list in the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, in which there's a long purport and a categorization of the various kinds of weeds that grow in the garden. So you have to be careful.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, Naimisharanya Prabhu says that sometimes weeds are intertwined with the plants that you're trying to grow, so you have to be very careful. And what if you aren't able, Kevala Bhakti Prabhu, what if you aren't able to identify the difference between a weed and the plant itself? Can you please elaborate about who can help us and how we can make ourselves open to getting help identifying those weeds? This is where association is very important, because when we get association with those we give permission to chastise us, a good chastisement can be very edifying. There's a way we can settle into new normals all the time and start feeling at home with our anartas. But if there's somebody who is on a higher standard of devotional service, and we submit ourselves, and then that person says, hey, knock it off, you're doing something that's going to be harmful to you, that can wake us up to have a different perspective and say, oh, I need to clean my act up. And that was a weed after all. And sometimes, in fact, the normal condition in the material world is that people don't want to see their anartas. They just accept them as this is me, because they don't know the difference between the soul and the body. In fact, the soul in the material world is asleep. Here's how asleep the soul is in the material world. Krishna comes and walks on the planet, and there are most of the people who see him walking around on the planet don't recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's here, right on the planet, walking, and people deny that he's God. And similarly, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he walked with his associates through different towns and villages, and some people criticized his chanting, and they didn't see that he was God, because the living entity in the material world has this propensity to be an illusion and wants to stay asleep and wants to maintain anartas and thinks that anartas are good and wants to maintain them. Just like right now, one of the main concerns that people in America have is, how will I keep eating meat? Even though the writing is on the wall that this is causing a huge problem for the whole earth and for people's health and so forth. But no, I have to keep this anarta of eating meat, and we'll send government troops, we'll have people die to keep processing meat so that everyone can keep eating it. We can keep killing animals. Otherwise, how will we survive? And that's how deep-rooted it becomes. So we have to be submissive and continually subject ourselves to the scrutiny of what the Shastra says and see how we match up to it. And also the sadhus who are following the process, if we can take association with those who are in that position, it can actually awaken us, because we feel their subtle attachment to Krishna, and we see also how they're not interested in anartas anymore, and the things that we thought were important start seeming insignificant in their presence. So there's a couple of thoughts. And if you just sharpen your intellect also and decide that you'll be looking out for anartas, and you'll try to extract them when you see them, just like a good gardener. Don't let your garden go, because once you do, it's really hard to get it back again. So be really vigilant and decide ahead of time that it's a good idea to weed it. Srivata Prabhu, he says, this Srimad Bhagavatam verse further emphasizes a realization I've had recently. Devotional service is a process of no excuses. I have to be completely honest with myself and not make excuses if I want to guarantee steady progress. Krishna and the acharyas are so accommodating and so merciful. They've kindly provided for a way to guarantee progress in any situation that I can possibly be in. Yeah, and this is the mood of somebody advancing in devotional service, that I want to be serious and I'm really looking at it carefully. And then Krishna will feel free to reveal things to us, that do more like this, do more like that. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayandite. He assists us when he sees that this is what I want. I really want to make progress, and he'll give us that vision. Divyangi says, how to understand that not everyone can come to Krishna consciousness. I've heard a lot from the lectures that we all already devotees, just covered by illusion by this material body. Thank you for a great class. Yeah, well, Prabhupada quotes Manushanam Sahasreshu Kashid Yatati Siddhaye, and that is that out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So even among those who are interested spiritually, we see that very few people come to the conclusion that they should engage in devotional service and it's sincere enough to get a Vaishnava guru and so forth. So it's rare in this world. And in the Nectar of Devotion, we have the 6 qualities of devotional service. And one of them is that it's rarely achieved. And Rupa Goswami explains that it's rarely achieved because in order to come to the point of pure devotional services, and that's what we're talking about here, one has to come to asakti first. And to get to asakti, you first have to come to ruchi. And before you get to ruchi, you have to come to nishta. And before you go that, you have to go through anartha nivritti, which means battling with the anarthas. And if you keep going backwards, you first have to come in contact with a pure devotee and, have some awakening. So there's a process that one has to go through. And he says, does Rupa Goswami, that asakti means like a real attachment to the process. Asakti means attachment. So attachment means an attachment to making advancement. You really got to want it a lot. It's got to be a deep attachment. Just like people in material pursuits, if they want to come to the top level, they have to really be attached to the idea. They can't be willy-nilly, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. A lot of couch potatoes talking about perfection, but they don't actually get there because they're not attached. So he says it's rare for somebody to achieve this level of attachment to wanting to advance in devotional service. Therefore, it's rare for somebody to come to bhava. And first you got to get asakti, then you get bhava, and then you can come to prema. So it's rare because of that. That doesn't mean, however, that every living entity doesn't have the dormancy of prema. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karu Udoy. Prabhupada translated this verse and commentated upon it, saying that there's a dormancy of love within every living entity, and it can be awakened by proper association. That's why we preach. That's why we take the trouble to make this available. Anybody can wake up because the soul is tatastha, and therefore can be influenced by a very strong devotee who teaches Krishna consciousness, says, no, do it like this. And one can change and go that direction. So anybody can be awakened also. But then we see even amongst those who are practicing devotional service, some hover around anartha nivritti a whole lifetime, even they don't, they get to Shraddha and they don't take the bhajana kriya. They'll just like, yeah, it's good enough. I appreciate Krishna and so forth, but they don't want to get initiated and take a vow and say, I'm really going to do this. And then when they get to anartha nivritti, a lot of people stumble and they go back, grow your hair out and hang out and, just be a has-been and maybe take it up in the next life. So this is K-chit. It means, it's a serious process. So it's not that everyone suddenly wakes up and goes for the whole thing, because it's not a cheap process. Krishna is not so cheap. You have to pay. You have to be all in order to come to prema bhakti. Okay. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Dhanavari. There you are.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. Would you please talk about diplomatic talk as a weed, not being straightforward? More, I didn't understand, please.
Well, in the Gita, Krishna says, Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata. That everybody's born into this world, Icha dvesha, with this idea of they're willful, they want their way, and dvesha, they're against what other people say. This is a polarization that takes place because of a contamination by the modes of material nature. My mind's conditioned to think in a certain way, and I want it to go that way. And I try to avoid it going the other way. Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata. This is a kind of illusion. Sarva bhutani samoham sargayanti parantapa. It's the conditional nature of this material world that people get in that polarized state of mind. And so once we get into that, then we can go for superficial items that don't relate to the 9 processes of devotional service and become involved in trying to position ourselves so that we get what we want and we avoid what we don't want, as far as our mind and our senses and our ideas of what's right and wrong. Those who want to go deeper in devotional service, they are very careful about getting involved in petty politics, even in the realm of the Krishna consciousness movement, although some things are obviously, to maintain a movement itself, there has to be some standard, it has to be maintained. But one has to be careful about becoming fully absorbed in these things. What to speak of worldly politics? We see sometimes people become so overly concerned with the politics of the mundane world. And this is also a waste of time for devotees, because unless you're running for president or something like that. And Prabhupada backed off on that. He had a political party, In God We Trust party. Some devotees were interested in it. And Prabhupada saw that they were, it takes a lot of work to put yourself out there politically, especially nowadays. It's a joke, because the electorate is so uneducated and so degraded that they have no idea of what a leader looks like. We have Srinivas Prasad Das said, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Dhanavari. Truly grateful. Can you please help us in understanding Bhagavad Gita 3:26 when we are giving JOSD class? What does that mean?
Journey of self-discovery.
So 3:26, how can we understand that? What is the meaning? And Sringara Ras, Hare Krishna Sringara Ras says, when anartha nivritti is so long and painful process, then is it even possible to achieve the perfection of life and develop for the Lord in one lifetime? Oh yeah, it's very, very possible. One can overcome anartha nivritti. You just have to be determined. As Rupa Goswami gives the 6 items, utsaha nischaya dharyat tat tat karma pravartanat sangha tyagat shato rete shadbir bhakti prasidyati. There's 6 items that guarantee the complete success of devotional service, and those are utsaha nischaya dharyat. There's enthusiasm, patience, determination, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, performing the different kinds of devotional service, and avoiding a bad association. And by doing that, one is assured of success. And even if you don't see it completely in one lifetime, if you give a full contribution the best you can in this lifetime, you're set up for moving forward, even in your next life, so that you're getting so close that you're practically in the Leela. In fact, probably the fact that you're in Krishna consciousness movement now, which is Lord Chaitanya's movement, means that you came really close in your last lifetime. That's why you're in this movement now, getting trained up in the very specific mode you are now for a transfer back to Godhead. So just be very determined, and Anartha Nivritti, Krishna will help you if you attend to the details of devotional service on a daily basis and don't become hopeless, then you'll come to the perfectional stage without a doubt. Okay.
Maharaj,
Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned that attachment to progress in spiritual life is asakti, and it doesn't come easy. So on that note, I thought about just last week in morning Shraddha Ma's class, she mentioned that the barometer of determining if you're making progress in spiritual life is how you're handling miseries. And that's why the advanced devotees, they can handle miseries so much better. So I have been like clinging to it and processing this all this week, because I have a standard response when miseries come and affect my life. And so I'm like, I'm telling myself, or I'm asking myself, what am I doing differently, which is appropriate for a devotee? And how can I tell myself that, yes, I'm making progress? So that was my hugest takeaway, and I wanted to share.
Yes, it's a valid point. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yam hi na vyatayam te te purusham purusharshapa, that a devotee becomes qualified, amritat vaya kalpate, to actually be fully absorbed in devotional service by becoming equal in happiness and distress. And this is something he mentions throughout the Bhagavad Gita, that one should practice that. Okay, so I just want to read a verse or two from the 7th canto. Does anybody know where we are now?
33, text 33.
Could you repeat that, please?
Text 33.
Of which chapter?
7:5:33.
7 what?
7:5:33.
7:5:33.
Sorry, Manisha.
7:5:33. We're continuing reading 7:5:33 from the Srimad Bhagavatam 7th canto. After Prahlad Maharaj had spoken in this way and become silent, Hiranyakashipu, blinded by anger, threw him off his lap and onto the ground. Indignant and angry, his reddish eyes like molten copper, Hiranyakashipu said to his servants, "O demons, take this boy away from me. He deserves to be killed. Kill him as soon as possible. This boy Prahlad is the killer of my brother, for he has given up his family to engage in the devotional service of the enemy, Lord Vishnu, like a menial servant." Purport. Hiranyakashipu considered his son Prahlad Maharaj to be the killer of his brother because Prahlad Maharaj was engaged in the devotional service of Lord Vishnu. In other words, Prahlad Maharaj would be elevated to Sarupya liberation, and in that sense he resembled Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Prahlad was to be killed by Hiranyakashipu. Devotees, Vaishnavas, attain the liberation of Sarupya, Salokya, Sarshti, and Samipya, whereas the Mayavadis are supposed to attain the liberation known as Sayuja. Sayuja Mukti, however, is not very secure, whereas Sarupya Mukti, Salokya Mukti, Sarshti Mukti, and Samipya Mukti are most certain. Although the servants of Lord Vishnu, Narayan, in the Vaikuntha planets are equally situated with the Lord, the devotees there know very well that the Lord is the master, whereas they are the servants. Text 36. Although Prahlad is only 5 years old, even at this young age, he has given up his affectionate relationship with his father and mother. Therefore, he is certainly untrustworthy. Indeed, it is not at all believable that he will behave well toward Vishnu. Although a medicinal herb being born in the forest does not belong to the same category as a man, If beneficial, it is kept very carefully. Similarly, if someone outside one's family is favorable, he should be given protection like a son. On the other hand, if a limb of one's body is poisoned by disease, it must be amputated so that the rest of the body may live happily. Similarly, even one's own son, if unfavorable, must be rejected, although born of one's own body. Purport: Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed all devotees of the Lord to be humbler than the grass and more tolerant than trees. Otherwise, there will always be disturbances to the execution of their devotional service. Here is a vivid example of how a devotee is disturbed by a non-devotee, even though the non-devotee is an affectionate father. The material world is such that a non-devotee father becomes an enemy of a devotee son. Having determined to kill even his son, Hiranyakashipu gave the example of amputating a part of one's body that has become septic and therefore injurious to the rest of the body. The same example, of course, may also be applied to non-devotees. Chanakya Pandit advises Tyaja Durjana Samsargam Bhaja Sadhu Samagamam. Devotees actually serious about advancing in spiritual life should give up the company of non-devotees and always keep company with the devotees. To be too attached to material existence is ignorance, because material existence is temporary and miserable. Therefore, devotees who are determined to perform tapasya, penance, and austerities to realize the self, and who are determined to become advanced in spiritual consciousness, must give up the company of atheistic non-devotees. Prahlad Maharaj maintained an attitude of non-cooperation with the philosophy of his father, Hiranyakashipu, yet he was tolerant and humble. Hiranyakashipu, however, being a non-devotee, was so polluted that he was even prepared to kill his own son. He justified this by putting forward the logic of amputation. This is a really important sentence. Prahlad Maharaj maintained an attitude of non-cooperation with the philosophy of his father, Hiranyakashipu, yet he was tolerant and humble. That's an interesting balancing act. And this, in one's heart, one has no intention of cooperating with the demoniac spirit of the material world, but he remains tolerant and humble. And a devotee knows that the Lord is fully aware of his intention in his heart. And that's why Rupa Goswami says that, I continue to hope for the Lord's mercy. And this is Tate Anukampam Susamikshamano. The devotee is always in this position of hoping for the Lord's full mercy, because the devotee knows that he's maintaining in his heart, in her heart, the intention to fully surrender to the Lord. And meanwhile, part of remaining humble and tolerant is remaining humble and tolerant of one's own inefficiencies in devotional service, or one's deficiencies, that is. That is that I may not be fully able to practice at the level I want to, but I do want to. And therefore, at that position, one can't get discouraged and think, well, anartha nivritti is too long. It may seem like we're swimming in the middle of the ocean and we don't know when the shore is going to come. But we have to take shelter of the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, we'll find in the teachings that Sanatana Goswami receives from Lord Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu quotes from Akrura, and Akrura mentions that we're like logs floating in a river perpetually, but sometimes or eventually those logs come out of the river and they rest on the dry ground. And he said, we've been floating in this material current for so long, but there is a time that we will come to the shore. And we should know that for sure. And as soon as one gets an inkling for devotional service and you get association with devotees, you should know you're very close. And therefore, you should remain tolerant, even tolerating your own deficiency in devotional service and going on with the feeling of non-cooperation with Maya. I'm not going to cooperate. I'm going to go on with my principles of devotional service, even though Maya keeps presenting opportunities, I'm just not cooperating. I remember once when I was in high school, and I had decided that I wanted to live a completely spiritual life. And so I was trying to find direction. And there was a Spanish teacher at school named Mr. King, and he was a Buddhist. And he used to teach Buddhism at his house nearby the school. And I had already started reading the Bhagavad Gita. And then, Krishna said you should offer your food. So in my own way, I had no idea how to do it. I was offering whatever I would eat, bite by bite, actually, offering to. And so then, I had that in my mind, and I went to this class that Mr. King was going to give on Buddhist meditation. And I got there early, and he told me you have to eat before you meditate. Take some, he took some bread and he was putting like peanut butter or something on it. And he said, here, you should eat this. And I started offering it, like, saying some mantra. And he goes, no, you don't offer it, you just eat it. And I said, no, I have to offer it. And he said, no, just eat. And I said, forget it. I threw the bread down and I walked out. And I was thinking as I walked out, no, I'm going to cooperate with Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. He said, offer it. So that's what I'm going to do. And Maya is always going to present some alternative philosophy, this, that. So we have to be fortified in what Krishna's idea is and say, yeah, I'm cooperating with that. And that constitutes our non-cooperation with Maya. And that actually feels good, to be a rebel against Maya, because we've been a rebel against Krishna and it hasn't worked out very well, has it? So, getting that determination that even though I'm way down in a hole, I'm confident that by not cooperating with my captors, Maya, and only cooperating with Krishna, he's going to pull me out of here. Let's see, we had Bhakti Lata. In Bhagavad Gita 272, purport, Prabhupada writes that one can attain Krishna consciousness within a second. Can you please explain that? Well, there's a story in the Bhagavat Sandarbha, or rather the Bhakti Sandarbha, about a very wealthy merchant, and he's going about his business, very intent on earning lots of money, Lal Babu. And because he had previous association with sadhus, there was this bhakti unmukhi sukriti in his heart. So one day when he's walking down the street, he heard this mother calling to her daughter and saying, come home now, come home. And when he heard that, it sparked that sukriti that he had in his heart. And he thought, hey, why am I trying so hard here in the material world? I should be trying to go back to home, back to Godhead. And then he changed his course in life just in 1 second. So there's a way that by performing devotional service in one life, in the next life, you have purva samskar. And this is something Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita when he tells Arjuna that because of purva samskar, association with the yoga process in a previous life, in this life, without even seeking it, it will come into one's mental system, and one will think, this is what I should be doing. And then we see people suddenly dedicate themselves to the process of devotional service. So because of continuation of that, we notice that someone can suddenly wake up to the very serious practice of devotional service and be on the path of liberation within just a moment. So we, as we're practicing and are fully aware of the opportunity, we should take full advantage of it while we can, because the effects will be a long term. Muchakunda Maharaj, 1051-53, Govinda Prabhu, Gaurav. Let's look at that. 1051-53 from Govinda Prabhu. He always has good verses. That's a Bhagavatam, of course. Dayanidhi Prabhu says, I unfortunately have been trying to defend you on Facebook regarding BBT edits, and my mind does not allow me to focus on my rounds this morning. I could only think of what I was going to write next. The only reason I mention this is to avoid controversy. Please, next one is, you talked about some jivas getting stuck on different stages of anartha nivritti, and that the process is not so cheap. Your honesty and in giving the straight sauce was really helpful. And welcome to Mira for joining us on this class. Okay, so this is a verse from the Muchakunda, and he says, when the material life, oh, this is very important. In fact, this verse is quoted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, and he's describing that when the soul comes to the end of his sojourn in the material world, he says, when the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees. And when he associates with them, there awakens in him devotion unto you, who are the goal of the devotees and the Lord of all causes and their effects. Purport. Acharyas Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti agree on the following point. Although it is stated here that when material life ceases, one attains the association of devotees, in fact, it is the association of the Lord's devotees that enables one to transcend material existence. Srila Jiva Goswami explains this apparent inversion of sequence by quoting the Kavya Prakash as follows: Karya, Karanayoscha, Parva Parya, Viparya Yo, Vignita Tishya Yoti Sa, a statement in which the logical order of a cause and its effect is reversed should be understood as Ati Shayokti, emphasis by extreme assertion. Srila Jiva Goswami cites the following commentary on this statement: Karanasya shigra karitam vaktum karyasya purvam uktau. To express the swift action of a cause, one may assert the result before the cause. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that the merciful association of the Lord's devotees makes possible our determination to become Krishna conscious. And the Acharya agrees with Srila Jiva Goswami that this verse is an instance of Ati Shayokti. We have Bhakta Alex, non-cooperation with Maya. Yes, we're in the non-cooperation movement. And Benedita Bunia, can you please help me understand the soul that is present in Vaikuntha has subtle body or not? Spiritual body. In the material world, we have a gross body, a material body that's made of gross matter and subtle matter. But in the spiritual world, we have a fully spiritual body, just like Krishna's fully spiritual body is Satchit Ananda. There's no material part to it. The senses are spiritual, and it is a fully spiritual body. So it is beyond the subtle body of the material world. Okay.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes.
Maharaj, we were, just a second. Maharaj, you were talking about Hiranyakashipu, and I was thinking that here is the demon who is willing to kill his son and justify it. And at the same time, he's also a devotee who has been sent down to play a certain part in Leela. The more we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, we kind of get to a point where we feel like when I started, there was a very clear distinction between good and evil, good behavior, bad behavior, consequence. And then while we keep reading the Bhagavatam, it kind of gets blurred and you're not quite sure what's going on, you know? Is it that I don't have a good perspective, or is there really no clear difference? Because here's a devotee and he's doing atrocious behavior, and then there's Putana and Krishna forgives her. And these blends are difficult for me to understand. Can you explain them to me?
Well, Krishna's all good, and those who come in contact with Krishna, they become purified. Now, in the case of the Leela of Jai and Vijay, there is this intermixing. Krishna is showing through interacting with his devotees who are acting as demons, he's giving the various lessons, and he's attracting our minds by the Leela and so forth. And so there's this very interesting nuance that comes in the Leela of Jai and Vijay, and they come 3 times into the world as was agreed upon. And in this Leela of Hiranyakashipu, we find various hints of this in the Leela of how actually Krishna is interacting with his devotees. So, for instance, after Lord Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu, then he goes and sits on the throne of Hiranyakashipu. And the question arises then, how could he sit on the throne of a demon who's so impure? Wow, the Lord, he needs his own throne, that's brand new. And so then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur answers and he says, he does it out of affection for Jai, because this is his devotee he sat on here. Even though it was Hiranyakashipu, actually it was one of his devotees from Vaikuntha whom he's very fond of. And so he shows, I sat on the throne of my devotee. And then, we have other instances when he's pulling out the heart of Hiranyakashipu. He's thinking, well, how could these impurities have come into the heart of my devotee? How did he allow them in here? So you get this intermixture of the actual Leela and the external lesson that's taking place there. So that becomes what Queen Kunti says, Maya Javani Kachanam Ajnad Hoksa Jamabdyayam Nalakshase Muradrisha Nato Natya Daroyata. She said, you're just like an actor on a stage. And on the stage, the actor's performing a dance or a play, and then you don't recognize who it is and what all the characters are and so forth. But there are ways, there's distinctions as well, because we find that those who thought of Krishna when they were being killed by him, they saw him, they thought him, they appreciated something about him, then they attained instant liberation. But Shukadeva Goswami makes a distinction, and he says that Vena was so atheistic that he didn't regard the Lord at all. He just totally pushed the idea of God away, and he didn't become angry at Krishna, or he just said, no, I'm God, and there is no God. So then Shukadeva Goswami mentions Shishupal got liberation, all these other demons got liberation, because at least they were angry at Krishna, or they hated Krishna. Kama dvesha bhaya snehad yata bhakteshvare manaha. So this is at the very beginning of the 7th canto. He says that by these emotions of hatred towards Krishna, towards lust towards about Krishna, and so forth, or bhakti, then one attains perfection. But then he says, but Vena, he didn't get it. Vena didn't get anything because he avoided Krishna completely. He didn't think of him, he didn't become angry with him, and so forth. So one principle is there, that if you come in contact with Krishna one way or another, then you become purified and you get liberated. And ultimately, that transcends all morality as well. So, that's there in the Leela as well. What's considered ethical in the material world, even in Bhagavad Gita, we get that, because there's a way in which Arjuna was waxing with his moral principles and ethics and so forth. But then he came to Krishna, and then Krishna says, yeah, it sounds really good what you're saying, but you don't know what you're talking about, because you're taking the perspective of a conditioned person and seeing, in relative terms, but you have to understand that you're the soul. So it transcends that. Krishna consciousness transcends those ethics. Although he later on says, for the sake of leading people on the right path, you have to maintain the semblance of decorum in the material world. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj.
Thank you for such a penetrating and good question.
Actually, Maharaj, when we think of Jai and Vijay going through all this, it reminded me a lot of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Ashlishya Padaratsam Pinashtumam. They are willing to take anything for the pleasure of the Lord. They go to being demons, they suffer it all, and then the Lord comes and takes them home again. It's very sweet. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah, very sweet. That's good. If you're tasting the sweetness of the hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, then you're very well situated.
Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, hey, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman.